My family threw a party on my birthday, but it wasn't for me. They sent me a casual text. Swing by if you're free. No mention of my birthday. No celebration. I walked in hoping just maybe they had planned something. But no, it was a party for my sister. She smiled at me from across the room. Oh, you're early. Since you're here, could you help with the cleanup? That night, I left them something they'd never forget. A letter. By morning, their entire world was crumbling. The sun had barely risen over Chicago when Jennifer Walker arrived at her architectural firm's downtown office. She nodded at the cleaning staff as she made her way to her desk, a sprawling workspace positioned beside a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking Michigan Avenue. The city was waking up, but inside her office, everything was already in motion. Jennifer was the founder and CEO of Walker Architectural Designs, one of the most sought-after firms in the city. The walls of her office bore proof of her accomplishments: architectural awards, framed articles from Forbes and Architectural Digest, and project blueprints of some of Chicago's most stunning landmarks. She had built this company from the ground up, fueled by hard work, discipline, and sheer determination. But none of it mattered to her family. As she settled into her chair, her phone buzzed with a voicemail notification. She sighed, already knowing who it was from before even pressing play. Jenny, we're off to Hawaii. We're celebrating Ashley's birthday this week. I know you're busy with work, but can you take care of all the family paperwork while we're gone? Jennifer's grip on her phone tightened. Her mother, Patricia Walker, was one of Chicago's most successful real estate moguls, glamorous, influential, and utterly obsessed with high society. When she wasn't hosting lavish brunches in her $20 million Sheridan Road mansion, she was making sure the world knew just how perfect her younger daughter, Ashley, was. Ashley, of course, had everything handed to her on a silver platter. She was a rising social media star, a lifestyle influencer with hundreds of thousands of followers. Her Instagram was a carefully curated collection of yacht parties, designer outfits, and luxury getaways, all funded by the family's wealth. Unlike Jennifer, Ashley had never worked a day in her life, and yet she was the favorite. Jennifer deleted the voicemail without responding. As she reached for her coffee, her phone buzzed again, this time a text from her stepfather, Robert. Robert. Jennifer. Handle the tax reports this week. Don't mess it up. That was all he ever saw her as, free labor. Robert had married Patricia years after Jennifer's father passed away, and from the moment he entered their lives, he made it clear that he barely tolerated her presence. Unlike Ashley, Jennifer didn't fit into his high society lifestyle. To him, she was nothing more than a boring workaholic with no social charm and no purpose outside of being useful. Jennifer took a deep breath, trying to push away the growing bitterness. She checked the date on her watch. 1 week until her birthday. Not that it mattered. Her birthday had never mattered. For years, her family had treated her birthday like an afterthought, if they remembered it at all. There were never parties, no gifts, no heartfelt celebrations. Just a brief, disinterested happy birthday text, if she was lucky. The last time her birthday had been special was before her father passed away. Back then, they used to go out for dinner as a family, just the four of them. Back when her mother still looked at her with love. Jennifer swallowed the lump in her throat and pushed herself back to work. Hours later, as the sun set over the city, she finally closed her laptop. She knew she should go home, but there was no one waiting for her there. No one would care if she stayed late at the office. No one ever did. But this year something felt different. This year she wasn't sure she could keep pretending she didn't care. Jennifer's birthday arrived like any other ordinary day. She woke up, went to work, and buried herself in projects, expecting nothing from her family. No calls, no messages, just silence. By mid-afternoon, her assistant, Sarah, knocked on her office door and placed a small bouquet of white calla lilies on her desk. "Happy birthday, Jennifer," Sarah said with a warm smile. "The staff pitched in to get you these." Jennifer's heart swelled. It was the first genuine birthday gesture she had received in years. "Thank you," she murmured, running her fingers along the delicate petals. Later that evening, as she packed up her things, her phone buzzed with an incoming message. Finally, her family remembered. But when she unlocked her screen, her stomach dropped. "Mom, we're having a dinner party tonight at the house. You should swing by if you're free." There was no mention of her birthday. No acknowledgement that this day was supposed to be about her. Just a casual dismissive "if you're free." As if she were an outsider in her own family. Jennifer's grip tightened around her phone. Of course, it wasn't a birthday celebration. It was just another social event for them. Still, a tiny part of her, the child who once yearned for their love, wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, they had planned something for her after all. Against her better judgment, she grabbed her coat and headed toward the Sheridan Road mansion. When she arrived, the sight before her confirmed everything she already knew. The mansion was ablaze with golden light, laughter and chatter spilling from within. The long driveway was lined with luxury cars, the same socialites her mother loved to impress, mingling in designer gowns and tailored suits. Jennifer stepped inside, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. No one even noticed her. As she made her way toward the dining room, she spotted her mother at the head of the table, a glass of Dom Perignon in hand, addressing the guests. "Everyone, thank you for coming to celebrate this special evening. We are so proud of Ashley's incredible success, and tonight is all about her and her brand's latest milestone." Jennifer's stomach turned to stone. It wasn't her birthday dinner. It was a party for Ashley. She stood there, frozen, a spectator in her own nightmare. No one had even remembered that today was supposed to be about her. And then the final blow landed. Ashley spotted her from across the room and waved, a smirk tugging at the corner of her lips. "Oh, Jennifer, you're early today. Since you're here, could you help with the cleanup later?" Laughter rippled through the guests as Jennifer felt the air being sucked from her lungs. That was it. The final straw. Jennifer turned on her heel, stormed up the grand staircase to her childhood bedroom, and grabbed a sheet of paper and a pen. If they saw her as nothing more than a convenience, then she would finally show them the consequences of taking her for granted. She sat at her old desk, her father's Montblanc pen in hand, and began to write. "To Mother, Ashley, and Robert, I have kept silent for years, allowing myself to be treated as a disposable afterthought while you thrived on my efforts. But tonight, on my own birthday, I finally understand that I have no place in this family. So, consider this my final act of generosity. Ashley, effective immediately, I am cutting off all financial and client support to your company. The reality of your so-called business success is about to come crashing down. Mother, I have submitted every document detailing your fraudulent real estate dealings and tax evasions to the authorities. The secrets you thought were buried are now in the hands of those who will see justice done. And Robert, I have turned over the evidence of your illegal investment manipulations to the SEC. Your firm's time is up. Enjoy the party. It will be your last." She folded the letter, placed it on the dining room table where they would surely see it, and walked out the front door, finally free. Jennifer didn't look back as she left the mansion. The cool Chicago night wrapped around her as she stepped into her car, gripping the steering wheel tightly. For years she had endured their neglect, their dismissal, their constant belittling. Tonight that ended. She drove aimlessly for a while, the city lights blurring past. Where do you go when the place you once called home was never really home at all? Her phone vibrated against the leather seat. She already knew who it was, her mother, no doubt furious that she had left the party without staying to clean up. She ignored it. Instead, she pulled into a quiet parking lot overlooking Lake Michigan. The water was still, reflecting the glimmering skyline. She exhaled, reaching into her bag for her notebook and pen. Jennifer had spent her life keeping her emotions in check, burying every slight and insult beneath layers of composure. But tonight she wasn't going to hold back. She flipped open her notebook and began to write. Ashley's company. Immediate termination of support. She outlined every instance where she had secretly bailed Ashley out, covering up bad business deals, securing clients through her own connections, fixing errors that Ashley's incompetence had caused. Without Jennifer's intervention, Ashley's entire empire was built on a crumbling foundation. And tonight, she was removing the last pillar holding it up. Patricia's real estate empire, fraud and tax evasion. Jennifer meticulously detailed the shady transactions, fake property listings, and forged documents her mother had used to maintain her image as a top real estate mogul. She had always suspected that her mother operated in morally gray areas, but after years of handling the paperwork for the family business, she had enough concrete proof to take everything down. Robert's investment firm, SEC violations and fraud. Her stepfather had treated her like a disposable errand girl, expecting her to blindly sign off on paperwork without question. What he hadn't realized was that Jennifer wasn't blind. She had been watching, documenting, and preparing for this moment. The evidence was damning: misappropriation of client funds, insider trading, and a tangled web of financial crimes that the SEC would be very interested in. She sat back, reviewing her notes. The truth was written in ink, undeniable and irreversible. There was no turning back now. Jennifer reached for her phone and composed 3 emails, one to her attorney, one to the SEC, and one to the IRS, attaching the necessary documents. With a final deep breath, she pressed send. The floodgates were open. She knew what was coming. The fallout would be brutal. But for the first time in her life, she didn't feel powerless. She felt free. As the city stretched before her, glittering under the night sky, she knew that tomorrow everything would change. And she was ready for it. The next morning, Jennifer woke up to the sound of her phone buzzing relentlessly. She had expected this. She stretched, feeling lighter than she had in years. The weight of decades of neglect and manipulation had lifted overnight. Now, the consequences of her family's greed and cruelty would come crashing down like an avalanche. She finally picked up her phone and checked her notifications. Missed calls 37. Voicemails 14. Unread messages 52. Jennifer took a slow sip of her coffee before playing the first voicemail. "Jennifer, what the hell did you do?" her mother's voice shrieked. "Do you have any idea what you've done to this family? Call me back immediately." Delete. Next voicemail. "Jenny, sweetheart, we can fix this. Just call me, and we'll work things out like a family." Jennifer smirked. Family? They had never been a family. Delete. She scrolled through her inbox, her lips curling as she saw the panic in the messages. "Ashley, what the hell, Jennifer? My sponsors are dropping me. Do you know how hard I worked for this? Patricia. Everything I built is at risk. You've ruined me. Robert. You ungrateful little brat. You've just cost me my career. Hope you're happy." She was happy. She switched on the news. It was already making headlines. Breaking news. Fraud investigation launched into Patricia Walker's real estate empire. Inside the scandal. How a social media influencer's business collapsed overnight. SEC investigating investment banker for illegal dealings. Sources say arrests may be imminent. Jennifer leaned back in her chair, satisfaction washing over her. Everything was unraveling just as she had planned. She scrolled through social media. Ashley's Instagram comments were filled with backlash. Followers were turning on her. Luxury brands had begun publicly distancing themselves. The facade was shattering in real time. As she scrolled, a call from an unknown number popped up on her screen. She hesitated, then answered. "Miss Walker, this is Rachel Lee from Forbes. We'd love to feature you in an upcoming issue about powerful women in architecture. Would you be available for an interview?" Jennifer smiled. The life she had built for herself was finally being recognized. She glanced at her phone one last time. More missed calls. More desperation. More consequences. She turned off her phone. For the first time, her future was her own. The dust was still settling, but Jennifer had never felt more at peace. For the first time in years, she woke up without the burden of her family's expectations weighing on her. The phone calls had dwindled, the desperate texts had slowed, and she had blocked every number that still tried to reach her. She was done. Instead of worrying about her mother's fake social circles or Ashley's next staged event, she poured her energy into her work. Walker Architectural Designs had landed its biggest project yet, a multimillion-dollar contract for a new urban development project in Chicago. She stood in her office, staring at the city skyline through the massive glass window. This was her world now, not theirs. Her assistant, Sarah, knocked lightly on the door before stepping in. "Jennifer, the media requests are piling up. Forbes, the Wall Street Journal, and even Architectural Digest want to interview you." Jennifer exhaled slowly. "Schedule Forbes for next week, Wall Street Journal the week after, and tell Architectural Digest I'll give them an exclusive in a month." Sarah smiled. "Understood. Also, there's an invitation for a charity gala next weekend. You'll be honored for your contributions to women in business." Jennifer smiled to herself. A year ago, her family would have scoffed at the idea of her being honored for anything. Now she was being recognized on her own terms. Later that evening, as she walked through her high-rise apartment, she allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. She had come so far from the woman who once longed for scraps of love from a family that never valued her. She poured herself a glass of wine, sinking into her couch as she glanced at her phone. A single notification blinked at her. An email from an anonymous sender. Curious, she opened it. Subject: I'm sorry. It was from her mother. Jennifer stared at the screen, her heart steady. The old Jennifer would have felt a rush of hope, of longing, of desperate wishful thinking. But this Jennifer? She simply closed the email. She didn't need an apology. She had already moved on. 1 year ago, Jennifer had been drowning under the weight of her family's expectations. Now they were the ones struggling to stay afloat. Her mother, once the queen of Chicago's real estate scene, was disgraced. The fraud investigation had destroyed her reputation, and longtime clients had severed ties overnight. The lavish brunches, the high society events, the designer-clad lifestyle, all gone. Patricia Walker was now just another woman trying to rebuild from the wreckage of her own deceit. Ashley's influencer career had collapsed just as spectacularly. Without Jennifer's behind-the-scenes business support, her brand fell apart. Followers abandoned her in droves after the scandal, and luxury sponsors pulled their deals. The perfectly curated illusion of her glamorous life had shattered. Now she worked weekends as a barista in a small organic cafe, her designer handbags long sold to cover rent. Robert, the once arrogant investment banker, had been forced into early retirement. The SEC investigation had uncovered years of shady dealings, leading to his assets being frozen and a permanent industry ban. His Bentley was gone, his private golf club membership revoked, and he now spent his days playing chess at the local park, a shadow of his former self. And yet, despite it all, they still depended on Jennifer. Every month, she sent a discreet sum of money to cover their basic living expenses. Not because she forgave them, but because she refused to become them. She would not let their mistakes define her. She would not revel in their downfall. One afternoon, as she finished reviewing plans for her firm's next international expansion, Sarah knocked lightly on her office door. Jennifer, the Wall Street Journal is requesting an interview. They want to discuss your success and whether you've reconciled with your family. Jennifer glanced at the unopened stack of letters in her desk drawer. All from her mother and sister, all begging for a second chance. She exhaled slowly and shook her head. Tell them I have no comment. Some bridges weren't meant to be rebuilt. She had already chosen her future. Jennifer sat in her office, fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup, staring at the unopened letters piled in her desk drawer. The envelopes were thick with handwritten messages, pleas from her mother, half-hearted apologies from Ashley, and a single note from Robert, which she suspected was less an apology and more a justification for his downfall. She wasn't angry anymore. She simply didn't care. The past year had taught her that closure doesn't always come with an apology. Sometimes the act of walking away was closure enough. Her assistant, Sarah, knocked on the door, breaking her thoughts. Jennifer, another letter arrived from your mother. Jennifer sighed, shaking her head. Put it with the others. Sarah hesitated. She's also been calling the office. Jennifer met her assistant's gaze. Blocked the number. Sarah nodded and left the room without another word. Turning back to her computer, Jennifer saw another email from Forbes. They wanted a follow-up interview on how she rebuilt her firm into one of the top architectural companies in the country. She had built her empire from the ground up, without her family's influence, and she would continue to thrive without them. A notification flashed on her phone. A voicemail. Against her better judgment, she listened. Jennifer, sweetheart. Her mother's voice was softer than she had ever heard it. I know I've made mistakes. I know I should have seen you, really seen you when you needed me. I can't change the past, but I miss you. We all do. Please call me. Jennifer stared at the skyline beyond her office window. The same city that had once made her feel so small. But she wasn't small anymore. She placed the phone down, deleted the voicemail, and went back to work. Some things were better left unanswered. A year ago, Jennifer had spent her birthday surrounded by disappointment. This year everything was different. Instead of an empty celebration with people who never valued her, she was exactly where she was meant to be. At the foster care center she had spent months supporting. The large community hall was decorated with handmade banners, colorful balloons, and a cake so big it could feed a small army. "Happy birthday, Jennifer!" A chorus of 30 bright-eyed children surrounded her, their laughter echoing off the walls. Each of them held up a handmade birthday card, decorated with scribbled messages and glittering stickers. Jennifer felt something stir deep inside her. Something warm, something real. This was what love looked like. Not expensive gifts, not forced family gatherings, but genuine care. One of the younger girls, barely 7, tugged at Jennifer's sleeve and handed her a slightly crumpled card. "I made this for you," she whispered, eyes full of hope. Jennifer opened it and read the wobbly handwriting. "I'm so happy I met you. I hope you have the best birthday ever." Tears pricked at Jennifer's eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were of peace, of happiness, of belonging. For years she had chased after a love that never truly existed, hoping her family would see her, value her, love her. But standing here, surrounded by children who had nothing yet still gave everything, she realized she had been looking in the wrong place all along. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. She didn't need to check it to know who it was. Her mother had called every day for the past week, trying to fix something that was long broken. Jennifer inhaled deeply, then with a steady hand she turned off her phone. She didn't need to hear another apology. As the children cheered and the candles were lit, she closed her eyes, made a wish, and blew them out. For the first time in her life, she had everything she needed.